Our presenter for this evening is no stranger to us. We all know her, right? And as such, just for those who are here who might not know her, she's a member of the Philadelphia Seventh-day Adventist Church. She's a wife, she's a mother of 2 boys. Get it right? Or 3? 2 boys. She's a host of the radio program Living Holistically that is here on East 96 FM. There are so many hats that this individual wears, but I'm sure that one of the most proudly is that of the servant of God. The person whom I speak of is no other than our own sister, Kerry-Ann Whitter.
Happy Sabbath, everyone. Happy Sabbath. It is always a blessing to come into God's words, whether it's Sabbath, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's something extra special about being in His words on a Sabbath. Don't it? Thank you so much for the invite, and thank you for coming out. And I hope that it's not a presentation, no, it's not a sermon. It's a rap session. We talk to each other, we talk with each other. Yes? I want to share something from Ecclesiastes and then create a framework for the discussion, and then we'll talk. Let's pray. Lord, we give you praise, we give you thanks, we honor your holy and matchless name. As I stand here, I ask that you will remove me from the vision of those who are here, and Jesus and him who will see. In Jesus' name. Amen. Alright, so I like the scripture found in Ecclesiastes 4. Ecclesiastes 4. And we'll read somewhere from about 7 to 12. And I think we can do alternate verses, but you have to project because, interestingly, as Brother Haji mentioned, you know, he saw it online, and I posted it, and several persons saw it, and their interests were sparked, and they wanted it to be live streamed. But unfortunately, we couldn't do that because of internet issues. So we'll be sharing this. But this is a topic that a lot of people want to talk about, you know, and I'm happy that a forum is created where we can have the discussion, because so many of us will talk somewhere. Let's start with 7. Then I returned and I saw vanity under the sun.
There is one alone, and there is not a second. Yea, he hath neither child nor brother, yet is there no end of all his labor. Neither is his eye satisfied with riches, neither saith he, for whom do I labor, and bereave my soul upward. This is also vanity. Yea, it is a sore trouble.
2, verse 9, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor.
For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up.
11, again, if 2 lie together, they have heat, but how can one be warm alone? Together? And if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him. A 3-foot cord is not easily broken. Amen. Amen. Now, some interesting words there. There is, verse 8 is very instructive. We work. How many of us work? How many of us work? Alright. How many of us are going to school at the moment? Alright. And we all put our best out there. But especially those of us who are adults and we're working. You know, after a while, as the word is stating here, you're building an empire. You're doing whatever, but who are you going to share it with? Hmm? Who are you going to share with me? That's what Solomon is asking. When you've done all of that, sometimes when you would have a great experience, sometimes you just want somebody to share it with, don't it? And I'm not going to do a poll to find out of the singles who are here who wants to get married, because I'm going to assume the fact that we took the time out to come tonight means you have the mindset I had when I was single, where I knew I didn't get the gift of singleness. Anybody here have that gift? Alright, so I think that's why you're here tonight, because you probably don't think you have the gift of singleness.
I have the gift of singleness.
You have the gift of singleness. Alright. So my assumption was wrong. Alright. Go ahead. Can you have it and don't know? So there are different perspectives to that. So the question is, can you have the gift? Like, my sister, what's her name again? Patricia, Sister Patricia. So like, Sister Patricia knows and she can put it out there, but then there are probably some persons who, they're comfortable in their own skin, they're quite fine being single. I can't tell them whether or not, but if you don't feel that drive to be married and whether, there are two things to it. Some people are happy in whatever state they are.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that they don't want to get married, but the fact that they aren't married isn't causing any great distress or anything. But if somebody were to come and sweep them off their feet, they would be swept. Yes. But when you have the gift of singleness, there's no sweeping. You've dedicated yourself, your everything to the word, and you don't have any interest in man and woman story. Can I put it in So it is more when you have the gift, I believe you're not so interested. You don't even give it much thought. You're thinking through, and you made a conscious decision to dedicate yourself to Christ and the world. Not that people who are married or who don't have the gift are not dedicated, but your focus is singly on the work of God. Is that how I put it? Okay. All right. Now, we're looking at how do we know when we are ready for marriage. Right. And one of the things I want to put out there is that being ready for Christ coming doesn't mean that because you're ready, He's going to come tomorrow. Amen. Amen. So being ready for marriage doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be married tomorrow. Yeah? So let's put it out there, because there are lots of stresses that we take onto ourselves because we believe that, I've done this, I'm here in my life, so it must mean that the logical next step has to be marriage. Now, the chapter, before the chapter we read from a while ago, talks about there being a time for everything. So even before going too further into the discussion, I just want to put it out there that we shouldn't put pressures on ourselves or allow anybody to put pressures on us to tell us what is the acceptable time for us to be married. There is summer, there is, tell me the seasons.
Spring.
Even though we have all the talks about climate change and the things that are happening, most times the seasons do fall as they should. In Jamaica, we have the wet and the dry season. Yes, that is changing as to when the rain normally comes, but we are guaranteed that there's going to be rain, there is going to be sunshine, and we know that there are going to be periods of drought as well. But who controls all these seasons? And they come in whose time? So there are seasons in all of our lives. And who's in control of those seasons? So there is a tendency, even though we're having this discussion, there's a tendency for us as a church to heap pressures on our single people. And maybe nobody is guilty of that in this room, but if you know of anybody who does it, pray for them. Don't pray for them. Because sometimes we pressure, or our societal pressure say that, okay, you must be married by X age, and then you must have a child by X age. And sometimes these are not happening for us, and we end up settling for less than God desires for us. And we're married, but we're unhappy. So I want to put the whole discussion in context by us looking at 6 reasons, and I'm going to ask you to help me to find other reasons if I missed out any. What is the purpose of marriage? No use wanting to be there, wanting to know if you're ready, if you do not know and understand God's purpose for marriage. Very important, I believe. One, and this one is the purpose of everything that we do in our lives, to equip us for heaven. And because the skin are burning me. Number 1 on God's list, in everything that we undertake in this life, it has to be preparation for heaven. So if you're getting married, if you're thinking about marriage and that is not number 1 on your list, go back to BCT. Because that will help you to choose your partner carefully. But if going to heaven is not a part of that, go back to BCT. That ought to be paramount. Number 2, to help us to understand the oneness of the Godhead. When God says 2 become 1, I've never been good in math. I'm going to tell you that, point blank. I was surprised when I passed maths at 6. And I've never attempted it since, yes? I kind of just come. I come teacher. I don't think a teacher should do this, but he told me how shocked he was that I passed that course. You understand? That's how bad I am with figures, but I'm saying the divine mathematics says that oneness. There are 3, but they're 1. 3 co-eternal beings, but we call them what? Gods? God, don't it? When we call them God. I don't know how it works. I don't know. I don't understand it yet. But thank God the Bible tells me that then face to face shall I know, even as I have known. So some of the intricacies and some of the depth of it I can't get in now. That kind of oneness, the oneness that God intends for male and female in the bond of marriage, we'll live the rest of our lives trying to understand it. Yes. So that's number 2. Number 3, for us to learn interdependence. No man is an island, it's still true. No man stands alone. You know, and one of the things that often happens is that when we live a long time without being married, we tend to get very independent. Very independent. Because my philosophy is, if you're not married, occupy till he or she comes. But sometimes we can occupy so much, acquire so much, that when the other person comes, you start, this discussion start to happen. Should I share? How much should I share? What should I borrow them from? But marriage helps us to understand that we need each other. We need each other. Number 4, it is God's institution for populating the earth and nurturing children for future leadership. Yes. And it's also an institution through which the love of Christ can be shared and we can experience true love. You see, this word is so battered. It's one of the most abused words there is anywhere. Love. Yesterday a man approached me. It's not very often I get scared. A man just walked up to me. I guess he was trying. He was trying to be. He might look somebody. But me is so frightened. You know what I mean? So there was no gentleness. There was no, and he saw the fright in my face. Because first of all, the distance was so close, but just his approach, I probably thought he was going to harm me I've not been this scared in a very, very long time. It was scary stuff. But that true love, a lot of people talk about it, a lot of people read all sorts of love stories, we watch all sorts of love stories, but true love, God wants us to experience that and everything that goes with it. But we can only get that in the bonds of marriage, Christian marriage. And then number 6, joy, fun, companionship, all of that goes with marriage. It is no less important than all the other aspects. God wants us to be happy. And you see the other top ones fall in place. Be sure. You're going to have challenges in marriage, but be sure your marriage will be one that is happy. Because Christ will be the center of your marriage. Any that I've missed? Any other purpose for marriage that I might have missed? It's a wrap session. Talk to me. I know my list wasn't comprehensive. But it was. Yes.
On a more temporal level,
Yes.
obviously after all of the other things are in line, I think also from an economic perspective,
Yes.
a way to go through life, like a life partner to achieve, some level of, whatever the goal is in the union, it's an easier way, as Solomon said, to make it better, contributing to the same goal.
Yeah. So financially, there are benefits. Undeniably, there are benefits. It is said, and it is true. If you look at some of the wealthiest men in this world, there's one common thread. There's one common thing about them. What is that? They're married, and they have remained married to one woman. The one that were divorced a lot, he got a lot in alimony, and so they're not so rich. But if you look, true or false? Just think about them. Think about them. Think about these men, the very wealthy, the very powerful men in our world. These men have remained married to the same person. Because let's face it, divorce is expensive. And a lot of them are not Christians, yes. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because marriage is a Christian institution. But a lot of people understand the benefits of a lot of the things that God has given us. But we as Christians sometimes underrate what God has prepared. Anything else? All right.
Also, a part of the original intention is to sustain the human race. God told Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply. And I think it's God designed that is the only medium through which the human race should continue. It's unfortunate that sin has marred the world, where adoption is necessary because people neglect, for whatever, sin is literally the reason why there are so many variants to how the family is structured. But definitely marriage is also to procreate.
All right, so again, we're looking at how does one know whether or not he or she is ready for marriage? That is what we're looking at. Now, to get to there, we have to look at God's model. Yes? And this is how, whenever I think about this topic, I look at God's approach to the whole issue. Now, look at the Genesis story, Genesis 1. So we know which day was light made, which day was darkness, which day vegetation came, everything. But everything, if you noticed how sequential things were. So, plants, for instance, depend on light, don't it? True?
Yes.
So before the plants came, there was sunlight provided for the plants, don't it?
Yes.
Everything there in Eden ate greens. The original diet, yes, was plant-based. And so before there was ever an animal or human being, food was provided. There was a home provided. Adam, before he got Eve, had a job. You following God's model?
Yes.
So before Adam coupled up, everything was in place for that coupling to be successful. So that when children came, there was a place to lay their heads. When children came, there was food to eat. When children came, Adam would have learned leadership skills because of the task and the role that God would have given him, so he could govern his family. You see it, right?
Yeah.
So we can talk about, are we ready? First thing, are you gainfully employed? And are you employed? Love can eat. Me never see a pot put on fire and love going to eat. And I have been around for a while. No, you can't curry it. You can't throw ketchup on it. Love cannot be eaten. Yes? So, if you don't have a skill, a career, or you're not ready yet. And I mean, no apologies. You're just not ready. JPS is very faithful. MWC faithful, I will not get water. Because right now, water not. How many of us get water every day, all day in our pipe? But your water bill every month on time, don't it? These people are very faithful. If a renter pay, landlord no miss the first of the month. I don't know which landlord. They might not even have to answer for the money, but somehow people might have a fix. Some of the past guy just in case. The shop that we read, our landlord carried the receipt. The first time every month come due it. So you carry the receipt. Exactly. You understand? As soon as the store opens, the receipt comes. So you know what that means, right? These things are, and let's talk about food. I don't know about, you see, when it's talking about my as a baby cooking for food. But for me, anybody will tell you, I do not do well when I'm hungry. I think probably could use me for those Snickers ads. You're not yourself when you're hungry, that's me. So me know more than anybody else. Me not even know very well. Yes, people are very good at it. But I get cross. Them little things. Short temper, all the rest of it. Now the truth is, we need food to eat. So if you're not at work, if nobody can employ because you don't have the skills that are worth the person's time, then no, you're not ready. You're not. The other question is, where are you going to live? As I mentioned, can you afford to pay rent? Can you afford to pay a mortgage? Where are you going to live? Our Bible tells us, so parents' house, our Bible tells us to leave and clean. No. You have many of us. You see, a lot of times we get married for the thrill of it, for everything else that is involved in it than that which God intends for it to be. It is a union, as we mentioned, for two people to thrive. And if children, God blesses you, the union with children, for the children to thrive within that union. For oneness. For you, because guess what? If you are in your parents' house, somebody's going to have to lead. And who's going to lead the house? A fufa house. Which part to live? Exactly. So clearly, the leadership has to come from the ownership. And a lot of times that can cause men to feel what's the word again? Emasculated? That's the word? Yes. And then the clashes do happen and there are those issues. So for the other question, and the second question, where are you going to live? And if you're going to live somewhere, there's going to be need for furniture. Again, the bills will have to be paid. The cupboards will have to be filled. You're going to have a little money for the little wear and tear, the plumbing, the stuff. So if you cannot afford those, no, you're not ready. How is your health? Have you been taking care of yourself? No, Elder, I'm wondering, I'm trying to gauge my speech and make it Sabbath worthy. No. When it is time for the national anthem, no. If you cannot do what is required for the national anthem, you're not ready. about companionship. It is about friendship. But it takes more than that to do the populating of the earth. So I'm going to ask again, are you taking care of the body that God has given to you? If not, if you can't do those services, then might as well just get some roommates. Get roommates, just live. Make someone rent an extra month. If you're companionship you want, just get to my bedroom and rent somewhere and share the accommodation so that people are always around you. But no couple. No couple. Because that marriage is not going to be happy. You get it, right? Alright. And the other thing, as it relates to... No, yeah, go on. Remember, talk back to me.
I was saying, to add to that, both partners will want to ensure that there are no illnesses or diseases that are going to be hereditary to pass on to the child. And if they can live with that, then they talk about it and they go ahead. But you know, when the child comes with some amount of deficiency or some illness, then someone would say, why never tell me say I had this or I had that, you know? So I have to discuss those things first.
So what you're highlighting is a preparation that needs to go in place. And there shouldn't be anybody getting married today without premarital counseling and doing irrelevant health checks. Yes? Because, you see, there is nothing more heartbreaking to a parent than a sick child, especially when it's not something that you can readily fix. Especially when they're very young and can't talk, and you know what I mean? It is very distressing. Imagine having a child that is going to be sick over the long term because of poor choices that we make. One of those is when we have the sickle cell trait and we create the combination of the sickle cell traits, mother and father having it, and then the child becomes a full-blown sickler. It is a very, very, very difficult path for children to walk. And it carries through to adulthood as well. Another thing about protecting your health, nobody wants to get married today to be a widow or widower tomorrow. And we don't take care of ourselves all the time. The lifestyle diseases take us down early. Do you know that Sister White says that we do God and His work and injustice when we live poorly, as in our health, take poor care of our health and we die early? That God frowns upon that? Because I think it is in... If you find it in Ecclesiastes, let me know. And it is in, I think it comes on that. I would have to look at it. But yeah, she talks about the fact, because remember, we are here to spread the gospel. We are here to impact the lives of others. And if we don't live well, we don't achieve the years that God intends for us to achieve by our poor choices, then we would have robbed God's mission of helping hands. Is it a logic? In the same way, if you don't take care of yourself and you go into marriage being so-so and half, then what is going to happen is that your husband or wife is not going to get all that God would have intended for them to get out of marriage. And also your children might have to bury you. If you notice throughout the Bible, for the first couple of hundreds of years of the Bible, that to hear a parent burying a child was almost non-existent. But the more steeped we became in sin, the more sin started to ravage our bodies, that became more and more of a reality. I mean, we are not suggesting that by eating well, we can prevent death necessarily. But I'm saying that, because God has a timetable, as I mentioned before. But some of us, based on our poor health choices, bring death, dismemberment, because sometimes with the diabetes and stuff, we lose our limbs, you know, and these things take away from our happiness, it takes away from our usefulness, and from our ability to contribute to a happy union. Yeah? What about your mind? Are you taking care of your mind? Are you taking care of your mental health? And often we talk about mental health, we tend to think about it as somebody walking and eating out of a garbage can. But you're married. Are you thinking happy thoughts? Are you connecting with Christ? Are you getting rid of the negativity that sometimes crowds your mind? Because you see, when we don't have even a good self-concept, if you cannot love yourself, and I'm not going to say love yourself for who you are, but love yourself with the love of Christ. Because if I were to love myself for who I am, there are many things about myself that I dislike. Because I do not match up to the standard of Christ. So the love you love yourself, I'm suggesting to you, is that love that Christ has for you. He doesn't love you because of who you are, but because He made you and He knows the potential, not just for who you are, but He knows who He made you to be and the potential that lies within you. So He's loving all of that, but He's loving the future you as well. But because we can't see the future, or sometimes we get stuck on our shortcomings and we can't love ourselves the way we should. So when I talk about loving yourself, I'm talking about the love of Christ, extending that to yourself. And if you cannot extend that to yourself, I am going to suggest to you that you're not ready to try to give that to somebody else. A broken person is not ready for marriage. Marriage is not intended to fix our brokenness. Broken people only break other people. Some of our marriages are not doing well because people couple up before they deal with their issues, thinking that the marriage will somehow cause the issues to go away. It does not happen. It creates two broken people. It creates more issues when you start to project your negativity and your brokenness onto somebody else. And linked to that are two other things. One is about our emotional baggages. Let me tell you. Are your problems those that can fit in a purse, a carry-on, or fill a lot of suitcases? You need to ask yourself these questions. We all have issues. Because, as it pointed out, we all live in a sinful world. And as a result of that, this world has its issues, and none of us is immune to these issues. True or false? True. But if you don't forgive the person who broke your heart last however long that was, and you did somebody else and you had an issue and there was heartbreak, and you're just carrying all of this and all of this and all of this, all you're going to much people life, So if you are filled with all this emotional baggage, you're not ready yet. You're not ready, because this is. Let me show you some things. It's when you can't love yourself and you're filled with emotional baggage, then you will not be able to recognize love from somebody else. Some of us have been hurt so much that when somebody tries to be nice to us, we cannot recognize it for what it is. No, thank God we still have good men in our church, don't it? We still have good men in our world. There you are. A few, but they're here. The fact is they're here. We're celebrating them. But I worry for them sometimes, because when they try to be nice to random women, because men have treated women so poorly, often their gestures are mistaken for advances. Yes? So if I open the door fair, I wear my look now. If think our hair pulled nice, and if say you look nice today, I look him, I look here. You know what I mean? And these are some of the things that some of us, if you're not at a place where you can accept just a compliment. You see, if you don't look in the mirror and think that you're a fine specimen from Almighty God, then anybody will tell you, oh, already I don't believe. And when they tell you, sometimes you're going to take it from, and you know what I mean? So you want one of the things you want to do in terms of you want to appreciate who God has made you to be, who you are, based on God's blessings on your life. Remember, marriage is not intended to fix you. No, I like the divine mathematics. Some of us talk about our better half, and it's a saying that we all use. But God never said half plus half equal 1. Even my maths. We probably could have shown how to working and get the one out of that. Eh? But God's divine mathematics says 1 plus 1 equals 1. So it's two complete persons, two whole persons who get married. You see it? Not a half of a person and a half of a person, because let me try it now. I divide, you know, you're going to start taking away the division, so you're going to get less. Do I? I don't mess it. But instead of increasing, half and half going to become less than it should be. But 1 plus 1, God's divine mathematics says 2 become 1. And I want this part to see. If you are not a complete person who's comfortable in your skin, a person who is comfortable in your relationship with Christ, you are not ready. There's no two ways around it. You're not ready. Because, as I mentioned before, marriage is a beautiful institution. Married people? Amen. Aye? Yeah. No, the amen is strong enough, so we're singing people there. I want them to believe it. So I'm going to ask the question again. Yeah. Married people, marriage nice, right? Yeah. Amen. So they're going to want to pursue the course. But, so I want to look this up. Marriage have a problem, no. No man. Whisper it. Because the joys outweigh the challenges by far. Have you ever had a disagreement with your spouse? We all do. But here where I'm going is here. You have this disagreement, and maybe you're not talking. And somehow, you start to think about this person. And all the person's virtues and the beautiful things about the person start come to your mind. Can you remain angry? I want to bend up your face, say, like you're trying to play the role. You know, if you ever just walk past you, you just bend. No, take. Somebody know the ticket. And I don't tell you who's pointing. You know what I mean? You just cannot stay angry. But the truth is, marriage has its challenges as well. So if you are not a whole person that is connected with Jesus Christ, you're not going to be able to withstand it. And that is one of the reasons I'd like to submit to you why we're having so many divorces even in our church. If you are the type of person that runs at every challenge in your regular everyday life, if the boss talks to you away and you run from work because you're in our work that place there again because the boss style you. If you live yourself and the landlord look quiet to the corner and you feel like the landlord get bad and you have to move. You're not ready yet. Because I said there are seasons in life, there are seasons in marriage. Including drugs. Alright? There is drugs too. So I was having a conversation with somebody and she was telling me, can't disclose too much, but she was telling me about somebody whose husband has a very strong appetite. And the kind of measures that she has to take to ensure that this appetite is taken care of. Now, the Bible tells us not to defraud one another, right? But let me say to you, in the context of God's church, if you have been running around, sleeping here and there, getting pleasures from all but you're not ready, you need a detox. Yes. You need a detox. And I don't necessarily mean with herbs, although some of it might need some calming herbs. But that's another conversation. The conversation I'm having is this. You need to go to Nisi, you need to talk to God, you need to spend some time with God and allow Him to renew your mind. Because some of our marriages are struggling because some of us have gone and done so many things with our bodies that when we get coupled with the person that God intends for us, this person is not able to give us the pleasure that God intends for us to get from marriage. And that's serious. If you're running around, you're not ready yet. And if it just stops up, drops, you're still not ready yet. You need a spiritual detox. You need a renewing of your mind. So if, I'm going to say it again, because you see, unfortunately, we have come to a time in our church, it was always sin, but we have come to a time in our church when among our young people, sexual immorality has been normalized. It's very unfortunate, but very true. And you mentioned some diseases, but you're looking at the ones that we transfer to our children. I will not say it in that way. Dismiss that. But many of us carry things and pass them on to our spouses. Yes, some of us have things that we are carrying that only God can help us. And I'm saying this to us, young people. If you're looking ahead to marriage, and let the married ones take it too, but if you're looking ahead to marriage, keep yourself chaste. Stay away from throwing yourself around. You don't need to be experienced, God will teach you. The institution of sex is something that God created before sin. Can I get an amen? Amen. God said, be fruitful and multiply before the fruit was picked. Yes. Well, I didn't mean it like that, but I meant it the other way. Before the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was picked, God said, be fruitful and multiply. So this institution came straight out of heaven, from the hand of God. Not saying that it's an activity in heaven, but understand, the God of heaven created this activity, but we have, through sin, we have messed it up so much. Yes, and so many of us, and this is one of the things that the baggages that we carry, so many of us have so many scars. Not scars, cuts that people can see, but so many emotional scars from how we have treated our bodies that some of us cannot even allow our spouse to see us without our clothes because we're so ashamed of who we are. So I'm saying, young people, and you see, that's the thing about God's grace, it's always available. It's always available until probation closes. Yes? And while it is still available, avail yourself of it. Ask Him to renew your mind. Ask Him to take your body and cleanse you and prepare you for marriage. Because if you don't cleanse the mind now, that same dirty mind is going to cause you to be unfaithful in marriage. That's the reality. Any other comments? Any comments? In terms of the things that we're looking for, I have one more. Or two more to an extent. Anything else any other question we should be asking ourselves in terms of whether we're already in other criteria? Do you have a personal relationship with Christ? And by I don't mean that touch and go. Good morning, God. God, I'm going to go up on the road. Thank you. God is good. Thank you, God, for daily food. Amen. Thank you. Come back in. As I lay me down to sleep, I pray, dear Lord, I say amen. God, I don't mean that. I mean spending quality time with God. Getting from Him each day what He intends for you. Getting from Him what He wants for your life. Coming from, every time you get excited about something, yes, you tell somebody, but one of the first person you want to talk to and say thank you to is God. Because you know that He's ever present. He's there in your life. He's the one blessing you. Are you there with God? Because if you don't know God, you know where it is. As the cliche says, if it's not wrapped up and tied up with God, you're not ready yet. Because when the storms of life hit you, you're going to be thrown out of the ship. The relationship, you'll be thrown out of it. Well, and out in deep sea too. And many of you will have on a life jacket, many of you will be able to swim, you'll drown. Are you connected with Christ? If you're not connected, if you don't have a personal relationship with Christ, you are not ready yet.
Another thing as well is in marriage, just like how our relationship with Christ has to be nurtured and slowly and you can't force on love for God, even if it is forced on you. In order to have a real relationship with God, you have to take your own time and learn of it. And so it is with marriage. So you find that a lot of Christians, surprisingly, who may be deemed as godly, are not able to nurture their marriage in such as a woman cannot even be compassionate enough to her husband, or a man can't be as calming and as nurturing and don't even listen to his wife. And so sometimes you'll see it play out in how they deal with their church members and how they portray their Christianity, and it's the same way at home. So you find that when you need to be soft and nice, there are a lot of persons who can't be that emotional and relaxed in a marriage. We assume it happens, but sometimes there are certain marriages that are failing because you believe that, okay, marriage is for procreation and marriage is for, yes, I may say I love you, but yeah.
It stops the act of love.
The act of love is not really shown, and it can be mechanical. So if it is that you have an issue, will you be able to sit and listen and talk and work it out, or will you be the one to force it onto somebody, just like how if it is as a Christian and somebody is again to believe, will you force it on and say, okay, you must? Or will you try to be compassionate and understanding and say, okay, what is it you're saying? How can we work it out and so forth? Those little things.
The softer skills, yes. The compassion, the tenderness. Very important skills that are unfortunately many times missing, especially from our men. And that sometimes is something outside of even their own scope of control. Because the way we raise our men is probably, I wouldn't want to say they're not ready, but we have not made them ready for marriage in how we raise them. So we raise a lot of our men without responsibility. A lot of times, if our young men are hurt and they express hurt, we tell them, yo, suck up that man. Man. So then, when his wife cry, she's supposed to suck it up. So then, when his wife want to hear from him, or when she want him to sit down and listen, man. And so a lot of our relationships are struggling because of this reality. Yes? So I would want to suggest to Christians, not to put this one as something in terms of something that we have created as individuals ourselves, but our culture and our parenting have together created a sense of coldness within a lot of our men. Probably the majority, I dare say. And so, for Christian young men, this is something that you have to be aware of, and you have to talk to God about. And listen to your partner, listen to your intended, listen to how women talk, men. And you'll realize sometimes some things about yourself. And the thing about the mirror is that if you look in the mirror and you see something out of place, your instinct is to fix it. Look yourself in the mirror. I don't know how many of you knew, but I did not. I thought it was a man in the mirror. But Michael Jackson has a song that says, I'm starting with a man in the mirror. It took me many, many, many years to know it was me. So, yes. So look in that mirror. Examine yourself. One of the Bible is also referred to as a mirror. Study Christ's character. If you want to know what the virtues are that you need for marriage, study Christ. Study his meekness. Meekness is very important for marriage. Humility are coming very, very important, because if everybody head hot, the roof are going to blow off. But there needs to be somebody who can calm and hold the fire every time there's a spark. Yes? Before the spark is going, you need someone to diffuse those flames.
Yes, I was looking at that when Lady was reading about your community. It's really true. And as I rightly said, we need a Christ-like character, because if we're not imbued by the Spirit of God, then we cannot display those attributes. Because if you look at the oneness, as we were saying, you rightly said, if we haven't experienced the oneness with Christ, they must be our Spirit and to walk, lest they get free. The only way Christ and myself, Christ and yourself, can combine is if you are like him. So if you're rough and if you're not humble, if you're puffed up, then you're Christ, you can't get along. Remember that he said that he has to chisel away those hairs from you and hew you into polished stones so that you can be like him. So unless we reflect these images really, unless we come to that oneness with him, then we won't be able to experience that or to display that marriage, the marriage to Christ first.
Amen. And this is what, if you don't get anything else, understand that to be truly ready for marriage, you need to be like Christ. I'm not saying you need to be perfect. I wish that we were all at that place of perfection before getting married, because we have some serious marriages going, yeah? But we need to attempt to model, through his leading, model the life of Christ. Some other things about Christ is that Christ was selfless. If you are selfish and it's just about you, you're not ready yet. If your partner has to be singing your praises 24/7 and everything is about you, what about your wishes and about your comfort and about you, you're not ready yet. Because let me tell you, every one of us will have children, but you will understand how insignificant you become when children come about, when you have to deny yourself for your child. I mean, even if it means food. Even if it means food. If I want banana, the banana has to first feed the child and then eat. Now everybody will agree, because we live in a world that says, myself first. But the truth is that we have the care and protection of children has been given to us by the Almighty God. Yes, and these are feeble creatures who can't care for themselves. And so I'm saying to you that if you are a selfish person where the whole world revolves around you, you're so egotistical, you're not ready as yet for marriage. Any other criteria you think needs to be fulfilled before we get married, or criterion? Anything else? I think I still have one more.
I do think that it's not lost on me that all of the criteria has to do with self-work. Many times, perhaps I've fallen into this trap as well. For those of us who are single,
And I'm wrapping up in 5 minutes because I didn't
and considering marriage, many times that we put a lot of emphasis on what we're looking for and not recognizing that we aren't what we're looking for. We're not where
Would you get married to you?
That's an interesting question.
Would you get married to you? Because that's the question that, based on what you're saying,
Right.
that's the question that comes to mind.
Exactly.
Would you get married to you? I probably
So
wouldn't
I
get
think
married to you.
what I'm getting at is it's really about self-work, like getting with the help of the Holy Spirit and the help of Christ. Obviously, it has been reiterated a lot. We really ought to be doing self-work during this period because, and I think in that way, in focusing on getting where we ought to be, whether spiritually and just practically, with the things that you listed before, like having a job and stuff like that. If we focus on those things, then we literally align ourselves for God to choose the person for us instead of us actively looking at, possibly getting ourselves into trouble because we choose somebody that God didn't intend for us. So.
And you made some very important points. And one of the ones I want to zone in on is God doing the choosing. Yeah? Whenever we try to choose ourselves, we make the wrong choices. And another caution, whenever marriage becomes the most important thing to you, when getting married becomes the thought in your mind, at every waking moment, you are at risk for making a poor choice. You see, whatever God tells us, whatever we want, He knows. He just wants us to have faith that He's going to give it to us. And many of us, people start to ask, what's wrong with me? Eh? Why you not married yet? Because I'm not suffering with you when you're married. Yeah, I got the questions. But one day I looked at myself and I said, if me stays on no in a marriage, had I been married before God intended, my marriage would not have lasted. Because I was not emotionally ready. My age on paper does not equate to my marriage readiness. And I want you to get this. This is extremely important. Oftentimes, we think that because we have come to a certain age, it automatically means we should be getting married. No. Some of us have a lot of things to deal with. And I like the fact, too, that you mentioned it's about, deciding to go about what you should be looking for in a person. Sometimes you spend so much time on that and projecting all faults on a person. So we're finding all sorts of faults with a person, not realizing that the lens that we are looking through will need cleaning. The lens are foggy. And because they are foggy, we can't see the true picture of what is in front of us. And so my caution to us is that we clean up the lens. And how can a lens be clean? We find it in the book of Revelation. Buy of me eye salve, that thou mayest see. The songwriter says, be thou my vision. Be thou my vision. And if you know, I think it was Abraham who sent his servant to look for a wife for Isaac. Tell me if I'm right. Yes. No. I'm not suggesting that we do arranged marriages, but there are some principles. Yes? Now, there were some things that the servant was told whose household this person should come from, etc., etc. But also, there were some criteria that the servant should look for. And one of those was the willingness to be a servant. Christ was willing to be a servant, but I can't just say that and leave it like that. The God of this universe humbled himself to the form of a man and took on our sinful nature. Came here. It is said of him in the word that foxes have places to lay their head, but the Son of Man never have nowhere to live. He suffered so much. He suffered want of so many things to teach us a lesson. And if we are not, because remember now, brethren, many of our marriages were broken because of financial challenges. So if you don't know when you're single, hopefully when you're broken or when your pocket full, no matter what state your pocket is, then you're not going to be happy in marriage. Because sometimes in marriage you're going to make wrong financial decisions and it's going to cost you. You're going to broke. When you're broke, you're going to bail. You're going to jump ship when you're broke. Sometimes you're going to get a lot of money. We're going to floss yourself outside of the marriage. Because some of us, the things that we couldn't get because we were poor. When money come, we get giddy and make foolish and poor decisions. So if you're not able to understand how to be content, as Paul says, I have learned in whatever state I am, therewith to be content. If you don't learn contentment, godliness with contentment, and the fact that is great gain, you're not ready for marriage yet. Marriage is not a fairy tale. Marriage is real life. And marriage is a spiritual institution. And that must be the prevailing understanding. It is a spiritual institution. And if you can't see the spiritual nature of it and you're not ready for the God part of marriage, you're just not ready for marriage. And the other thing, the last thing I want to share, are you ready to be completely open and vulnerable with somebody else, or are you still going to be keeping secrets? If you're not the person who can see yourself just alone, even in dating, there must be some level of disclosure. And if you can't trust anybody enough, I'm not saying that everybody you're going to disclose to, but if you are intending to be married to somebody and you can't see yourself sharing a little bit more of who you are with them than you would with the average person, you're not ready yet. Marriage is a space of complete vulnerability. No secrets. Except maybe Victoria's. But no secrets. Didn't get that. No secrets should be kept in marriage. I'm going to say, I'm going to come on this side of the podium and say it again. Because often we feel that there are some things our partner must know. No, unless you are planning a surprise for your partner, that is okay. But if it's not a secret that's going to contribute to a surprise for your partner, a secret is not, that's not for marriage. And there are some of us who have these beautiful ideas of how we're going to do it and what we're going to disclose to them and what we're going to keep from them. And I'm not necessarily saying that your sins and your past life, that is for Jesus Christ. However, if there is something that you think might come out that might impact your relationship, then when you're doing the premarital counseling with a third party, say, because then you have a mediator that can help to buffer, and help to bring some sort of calm to the situation. And if your partner flares up or, but you want to understand that marriage is a place, I'm going to repeat it, of complete openness and vulnerability. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. These are the pointers I want to share from my perspective. I don't think it concludes everything. I'm sorry if I didn't come with a magic formula. But the readiness for marriage is practical and it is also spiritual. It's a combination of both things. And I want to encourage us as we contemplate the whole matter of marriage for those of us who are not yet married, let not age be a factor. I've said this in so many different ways because it is so important. It is so terribly important. You have no idea how many people are suffering in unhappy unions because they thought time was running out. You know about Abraham and Sarah? Abraham laughed at God. Don't it? I didn't laugh, I say, oh laugh. Sarah laughed. And we had some laughing again and some disbelief down in Elizabeth and what's his name?
John.
With John, what was her husband's name?
Zacharias.
What happened to Zacharias because of his unbelief?
Dumb.
Him?
Dumb.
He went dumb. God is the creator of time and he remains the master of time. And I think it was somewhere in Ecclesiastes, I saw it earlier. Yes, Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11. I was looking for something and the Lord put my eyes on the first part of Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11. It says, He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Thank you. Getting ready for marriage. Sister Kerry-Ann Whitter, as you're leaving, I want to take the time out to thank you so much for being here with us, for sharing with us some criteria that we needed some reminder of how to get ready for marriage. You reminded us that it is one of the criteria which I believe is so important for us to keep with us tonight is that we need to get married for the purpose of serving God, for making it in His kingdom. And if that is our goal, then we are on the right track for getting married. So we want to thank you so much for leaving these words with us and for reminding us of how we need to know that it is practical. We need to be practical in getting ready, and that we need to know that we need to have that spiritual element to it. So thank you so much, Mrs. Whitter.